Hey guys, it's John. In this video I want to run through how you're going to keep your clients on for longer. Specifically how we're going to break free from 12-week packages and keep clients on for at least 18 months. This is an exact framework that I use with one of my clients, Lloyd, to help him 7x his income. And the majority of the income came from obviously earning more per client, taking an average client value of say $500 if they stay with us for 12 weeks. We ended up averaging around sort of $6,000 per client. And we did that because we not only increased the time frame they spent with us, but we averaged at least one referral across the client base. So we knew that if we went from extending their lifetime and pulling in another client from that client and extending that client's lifetime, that's worth 6,000. So it's a huge, huge lever here. And we spend so much time trying to get clients in the marketing, and a lot of us just do not show the horizon on the back end of service. And this is a really, really easy way to increase your income if you haven't got a huge exposure and you haven't got hundreds of leads flooding through the door. And to be honest, pretty much every coach I speak to, what's the biggest bottleneck? I need more leads. It's not the fact that they're terrible on sales or they're not good at what they do. It's just the lack of people inquiring about their business. So one way to fix that is, well, if we increase the time they stay with us and turn that client into a referral machine or leveraging that client's network of people, you're going to increase the likelihood of people signing up because there's higher trust. So it all fits in together. So this is obviously earning more per client's great, but also turning that into a potential lead generation machine is another secret weapon. And we're going to run through these strategies alongside that framework. So let's get into it. Obviously, we've got the months starting from like month 0 to month 18. And I want to run through that initial framework of what we need to do. Now, before we get into the framework, we need to kind of think about goals, because goals, your client will come to you and they'll probably have a goal in mind. They'll call it like a 3-month goal, but realistically, it's probably like a 6-month goal. So what we really need to do as the coach is you need to have a goal for 6 months, and it's probably not even 18 months. You need to probably, I'll put it up here. You need a 2-year goal as well. Basically, this 6-month goal is them lean, lean, ripped, but a little bit more muscle mass coming off the back end. So that's the vision they have. We want to line up another vision for them, which is basically, what does that person look like once they go through like an additional bulking phase where they got a lot more muscle added onto them and then they're leaner again. And we want to show them that Superman version of themselves where they go through that process again, and we have that ready because that's really important for showing their horizon. And I shit you not, the amount of opportunity that coaches miss by just not showing the horizon is crazy. They just assume that clients have the vision in their head and they're just gonna roll on continually expecting that, oh yes, I know everything's gonna change and I'm excited. A lot of clients drop off because if they don't feel there's any change in the programming or the plan, and they're not noticing the change in them, which they're not really if they're not getting super lean, because if they're in the bulking phase, they're kind of adding on tissue and they can't see it. They're just thinking, well, I might as well drop off. I might as well save myself some money. Nothing's changing. My program's not changing. I can't see any material change. I just do this on my own. And you've really got to forecast here. So lining up a 6-month goal and a 2-year goal is absolutely key. Once you've got that, then you want to look at the framework. So the framework itself, if you think about it, an easy way to break past this barrier is if you're doing an initial like sort of dieting phase, is to do it for like a 6-week process. Now, it depends on the client. It depends on their goal, obviously. But to be honest, this is probably built around the average of general population. So if you're working with lifestyle clients, this is pretty applicable because let's face it, pretty much everyone could go on a hard diet. Pretty much no one out here, with the exception of really slim and hard gainers, it makes sense to put them in initial deficit phase because that's the quickest way to instill trust, because it's the quickest way for them to notice progress. It's quicker to strip off fat than it is to build muscle. So if they can see that difference quite quickly, that builds the trust in the service that you know what you're doing, but also it's exciting. So you really want to get them towards that point where they're really lean, plus to put them in a good spot where they're more insulin sensitive, and off the back end, you can look to build more tissue more quickly. It just makes a lot of sense. So instead of just aiming for like a 12-week diet, see what you can do for 16 weeks. And then if you can break free from that initial 3-month mark, you're already over that sort of mindset process of like, I'll jump on for 3 months and I'll jump off again. So going through like a diet phase, a deficit, for at least 16 weeks wouldn't be a bad idea. And then off the back of that, you probably want to reverse out anywhere between what I would just say sort of 6 weeks and 8 weeks. So this is a basically reversing out phase. This is a deficit phase, or like fat loss. And then in here, this is where you want to communicate and explain the fact that they need to do this slowly. Again, depending on your market, but this was a huge difference for Lloyd, because we started to communicate the fact that most people can start a diet, but they can't exit one. And then when we started putting that into content and explain the fact that we don't do 12 weeks anymore, the reason for that is most people put more weight back on if they don't leave a diet accurately and they don't reverse out properly. Then people then started to listen, and it took about 4 months to that message to sink into his audience. But people will come up and they inquire, asking for 6 months instead of the 12 weeks, because they said, I don't want to do this again. I want this to be the last time I do like a proper diet. I don't want to get stuck on it. I don't want to rebound like last time. So reversing out and explain your ability to explain the importance of that is key. If it's more of a male market, this phase is important because this is probably the phase they're going to look the best in their entire life. And each time they go through that and they put more tissue when they come back to that phase, they're going to look the best because they're leaner, but the glycogen comes back in, they're fuller, and the strength goes up, the vascularity increases, and it's just a really good time to be alive. So we want to sell that, and that's one of the biggest hurdles you've got initially. You really need to sell the reverse. If it's fat loss or if it's more male muscle building, selling this is key because that gets them onto 6 months. And then most people who stay for 6 months realize it's a bit of a process. And at this point, we could talk about road mapping, but this is where you show the horizon a little bit more in depth and you kind of recap on the progress. So they've basically gone through the diet, they're lean here. Now, if we're going to look to add on some muscle, we're going to look at the horizon. So most people probably need a bulk for between 9 months and 12 months. Obviously, bulking really isn't dependent on like set time. It's dependent on how long you can get away with and how long their body's responsive. If they become a little bit more insulin resistant and then the body's just not putting food in the right areas, it's not putting it to good use, then we might have to cut the bulk short and do a mini cut. But in essence, if we look at the bulk phase, it could last anywhere between this time period. But let's just assume that it's 9 months instead of 12, because again, I'm thinking about the most people who are in general population or lifestyle market, they're probably going to be a little bit more blasé with food, so we probably need to cut it short a little bit more quickly. So if we're looking for 9 months, then it's actually this period here. But instead of just doing one big bulk, I recommend undoing that and splitting it into at least three stages. So you've got initial phase here, you've got another phase here, and then you've got another phase here. Now, the reason I recommend that is for them to judge incremental progress over their entire body. They're not going to spot it as much as you will. Plus, if body fat's starting to kind of climb back on, then it's demotivating, and that bulk is a hell of a slog. And I know this is a big issue. It's a big issue across a load of different markets, from like physique development all the way to just general pop and fat loss, because last thing they want to do is undo all the hard work they've just done. So we really want to stretch out their conditioning, but to get their mindset right and to give them little targets to hit on a bulk, you can even just portion the volume into different muscle groups. So if we just say muscle group 1, muscle group 2, and then muscle group 3, it makes it more enjoyable for the client going through it. Now, we know that obviously they're going to train everything, but if you can portion volume towards certain target muscle groups that they want to do or they want to build, let's face it, most blokes is delts, arms and chest, maybe a bit of lat, but you can get them focusing on certain movements, certain exercises in the gym, and using the weight progression as a marker for progress. Because we can't rely on them getting lean anymore. We have to use different measures so it makes it feel like they're progressing. And then if we obviously split down that bulk phase into little chunks, all of a sudden it's more manageable, and mentally it's just like, right, phase 1, we're going to obviously, for you, we need to work on your width. If you want to like look bigger in a vest or a t-shirt, this is going to be mainly top line. So this is going to be focusing on chest and like side delts, I would say. And then, this second phase, it could be like thickening from the side. So this is where we're going to look at portion of the volume a little bit more towards the lats and rear delts. And then this phase could be a tidy up phase where you could look at balancing and like harmonizing everything, any weak areas or weak areas here and so on and so forth. But having clear objectives for each bulk is key, because anyone who doesn't want to go through the entire slog and potentially is going to drop off here, it gives them reason to stick around. And again, if you have this 2-year picture of them going through this diced, and then that could be another client who's gone through this, it could be yourself, or it could just be, to be honest, a picture you think realistic, anything off the internet where you think is actually realistic for this client. They are tying onto this vision, that's going to get them through here. And it's going to make these little chunks super exciting stepping stones for them to kind of go through. Yeah. And obviously back here, we're now into like a deficit phase. So that's another deficit. So that's them getting lean again. And to be honest, that shouldn't be a hard sell, because that should be the exciting part. That should be revealing all the work you've just done. Now, again, depends on how sensitive they are, what you can get away with. You can even extend that. So it's, instead of 3 months, it's 4 months, and all of a sudden you've increased, and that's like a year's worth of bulking rather than just 9 months. But the point I'm giving you here is I'm trying to illustrate little stepping stones and breaking down, but just showing this to the client. And when you do the framework, you want to roadmap it. So when you first sign someone up in the onboarding phase, you want to do a personalized roadmap. So once you've got their plan live, you want to film yourself going through the plan and then getting something on Canva together, maybe having the images of a client going through these stages and having that picture there, just to show them what you've got planned for them. And then something, you just lay that expectation from the start, so they've got a good anticipation of what they're going to look like and where the work is going to go. All these little check-ins are going to add in to a bigger structure. Again, if you're just relying on check-ins and like your word for them to visualize, because most people need, we're stimulated more by seeing stuff than hearing it. So especially blokes. So if you're not showing anything and you're just describing it to them and leaving it up to their imagination, which, let's be honest, can be like, you're not doing yourself a favor and you're not doing them a favor. So don't rely just on them working it out. Work it out for them, show them. So you want to show that, show the horizon. I'd probably at least minimum 6 months. And then when you get to like 6 months or a bit before, you obviously want to show the further stages. So road mapping is absolutely key. And then you can look at feedback. You could either get that in a survey, anonymous, or just with a name survey, or you could just ask them. But getting their take on how they're getting on inside the service is really important, because not only can it help you improve, but it can also line up opportunities for referrals. So I typically find the best frequency is like 6 weeks. You don't want to do anything under that, because people start to devalue it. Anything beyond that, it's not really an issue, but 6 to 8 weeks. So if you look at the time stamps, looking at doing it there, 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 and so on and so forth. And then if you want to, you can alternate between anonymous, direct from them, anonymous, direct from them. You're just checking in on that person and giving them opportunity to say their bit. I think a lot of retention is about preventing problems from developing. So again, this is why we want to give projections and road mapping early on, because you want to build that vision and you kind of constantly reinforce it in the check-ins, but also you want to touch base with them systematically just to get their take on how they're getting on as just on a human element. So you're just checking and making sure that you're doing everything you can to improve the experience. And are they enjoying it? Are they going through this? Is there anything they want to change? Maybe do they want to work on a different muscle group? So on and so forth. So getting feedback is really, really key. And then we can look at progress reports. So progress reports, this is where you want to analyze what your current average client lifetime is, because you want to anticipate people, well, if there's a junction around, let's just say month 3, but if you come in 2 weeks before people would typically leave, you can recap on the progress they've made, you can show the horizon, and then you can obviously get them on a one-on-one basis if you want to do it on a call, or you could, that check-in, maybe you can do a bit more of a bigger check-in, a bit more of a focal point for that client, and you do like a little recap on how they've been getting on. Because again, the whole point about progress reports is you're showing the biggest contrast. You're showing them from like time zero to like week 10. And then when you get to like probably here, if you're going to do like a progress report about a month, or let's just say what week that would be, week 24. So week 22, you would just do, okay, what's the first photo they sent you versus that 22 check-in? And then you're just showing that contrast, because they're so close to the process, they're not going to see the change that incrementally. So you just want to be the one to kind of show them just how far they've come. Most clients don't pick that up. And again, if they don't feel like they're making progress, why are they going to pay for something they're not getting? But again, their perception and reality are two very, very, very different things. Again, don't leave them to work it out, show them, take responsibility, take action, and be proactive with this, and it will pay you literally. So yeah, making sure that you're continually doing progress updates. And again, I probably do this at week 10. I would do it at week 22, and then you probably want to do it at the end, like 2 weeks before the end of phases. Rule of thumb. And then that way you're showing them a little, just how far they've come, the point of that phase, the progress so far, and then it's another point to show that progress, show the horizon, show and update where they're at, the trajectory, and like what's ahead for them, where they're going. So that's a good opportunity. And off the back of those progress reports and then the feedback, you can ask for referrals. And one of the best ways to do that is just say, well, once you get their feedback and ways that you can improve the service, ask who would benefit by going through it, and you could do the thinking for them. You could just say, is there anyone at work, anyone at home, anyone in your immediate friend group, is there anyone you see in the gym? Was there anyone that would enjoy the results you're currently getting? Or you could just say, look, to be honest, mate, I'm looking to get more clients. I love working with yourself. You're ideal. Is there anyone like you? Not to inflate your ego too much, but if there is anyone, mate, I would love to reward you. Name it. If there's anything I can give you, let me know. If it's a voucher or if it's like a minor kickback, I'd love to say thank you in any way I can. And that's it, because most people know 4 or 5 people. And as you build the relationship throughout this time frame, and you allow that relationship to build naturally and authentically because you have more time, and then you can start to kind of understand a little bit more about the person, you can just look to help others up front. And their word is so much more powerful than yours when it comes to lead generation. So you're just creating that environment where people will want to refer you over time as they get better results, but as they go through this process. And like I said, the material difference for you is you potentially going from earning $500, let's just say, for 12-week packages, all the way to kind of going towards the $6,000 mark, where you can keep clients on for considerably longer because they're expected to, and they know what's coming, and they're excited, and they're kind of knowing that they're on the route to it. But also they'll want to refer if they're enjoying it. And if we can just average 1 per client, it makes a huge, huge difference for the growth of your business. Slightly different video today, just going through it live, but I've covered this in a lot more detail. I've got my free 8-hour course of how to get your first 5K. There's elements in that course. If you want to go and check that out, I recommend you do that. Or if you want to book a call in below, I obviously work one-on-one with people. We can go through it and what this would look like with your framework and your service specifically. Anyway, I hope that helps. I'll see you in the next one.